Content isn't video. Content without embedded analytics, monetization logic, fast trading, and retention levers is just dead weight in your sportsbook.
You're listening to 15M Mastery, a show that empowers you with insights from the leading iGaming experts to enhance your personal or business performance. The show is brought to you by tech-driven affiliate and media company Already Media, and supported by the AI-powered data analytics platform Blask. And Yo Investments, a fund manager investing in outstanding people who are disrupting the iGaming, fintech, and crypto industries. Hey everyone, and welcome back to 15M Mastery. Today we're joined by Dmytro Matiukha, CEO at Betinvest. Dmytro leads a full-cycle sports entertainment tech provider with over 20 years of experience operating worldwide. In this episode, we will explore how tech providers really work behind the scenes. Welcome, Dmytro.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your lovely 15-minute mastery. And hopefully today I'll give the best efforts, I'll give the best shot to deliver top-notch speech and deliver it to your podcast. So thank you. Thank you very much.
I have no doubts, Dmytro, and with your experience and your company being one of the biggest in the iGaming, I'm really looking forward to hear your expertise. So let's jump straight into the first question. So what do operators misunderstand about the value of using a sportsbook provider instead of producing the content in-house?
Well, yeah, thank you for this lovely question, Dmytro. So let's start. So let's be clear. The content in this business is not an accessory. It is not a decorative item you slap onto your platform to tick the box. So content is the business, or at least it should be. If you expect to retain users, then you have to increase engagement and scale profitability, obviously. The common misunderstanding among operators regarding that is the assumption that launching tournaments or adding some video streams equals having the whole ecosystem and the content strategy overall. It does not, unfortunately. Why? Because creating a full content pipeline from scouting, matchmaking, rule enforcement, and stream integrity to data tagging, market generation, and trading is not a project. It's a business vertical, and it behaves like one, with its own burn rate, margins, infrastructure, and failure risks. And here are the brutal economics. Launching full-stack content from scratch will cost you around $20 million from the get-go and up to 2 years of burn before you even sniff break even, if you make it that far. Unfortunately, 90% of companies do not make it, do not finish the line. Why? Because content isn't video. Content without embedded analytics, monetization logic, fast trading, and retention levers is just dead weight in your sportsbook. And that's why in Betinvest, we've operationalized this model with fire and blood since 2019, with real clients, real data, real results. We do not theorize, we build the infrastructure and make it profitable. And how we scale it? With those who are ready to treat content as an engine and not as a decoration.
I love it. It's a great answer. And, sometimes it feels like many operators out there, they still kind of go for a mixed solution where they might build something in-house or they might borrow something from, the third party. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts. Which parts of the development process must you build in-house versus buying from outside providers?
Well, that's actually a really, really sound question, Dmytro. And that's the thing. Here's the rule. If it impacts margin or user experience, we build it in-house, non-negotiable. At Betinvest, we fully own the parts of the stack that actually move the needle. So, our own trading team, data collection and processing, fast market generation, as well as RTMP-based stream infrastructure are the key. Also, behavioral market adaptation. And why? Because that's where real-time control lives. You cannot just outsource the differentiation without taking into consideration all of these components and all of this, the way I call it, micro-engine data. So do we buy components? Sure, we source external tools where it makes economic sense, not where it compromises control. And yet we never customize for the sake of it. Every change has to map back to a business case. So if it doesn't drive engagement, margin or monetization, well, it doesn't just go into the roadmap, because in the end of the day, we're not the church, we're the business. So we have to look into unit economy. We have to look into every precise and valuable piece of data, and all of the strategic decisions must align with all the data and all the necessary information that might come in handy.
I love it. I really like the fact that you mentioned player experience, because many platform providers and operators, they actually keep forgetting who is the real, customer is. So I'm just wondering, where does a sportsbook provider most directly shape player experience?
Well, yeah, when it comes to the player experience, then we shape how the user bets and how often they bet and how long they stay engaged. And that's a triangle that actually, you can either call it the triangle, the trident, depends on what thing you like in the world. So it's some sort of the triangle of influence. And if your provider isn't actually mentioning all three, then you're leaving money on the table. How come? Well, straightforward. Today's bettor is no longer a 90-minute fan, and that's a fact. You see how the social media and all of the services and all of this new unit economy and attention economy have changed the world altogether. So that era when you had the 90-minute football match and it was interesting for all the audience is no longer the case. So no longer one size fits all. And the modern user is attention fragmented, attention driven, mobile first, and dopamine turned. And that's a fact. This means you either adapt your content to the attention span of TikTok, and Twitch, like clip thinking is also called, or you watch your content becoming, irrelevant and your attention drop. And that's where our value comes in. In our company, we deliver fast action content formats like eFootball, eBasketball, other types of sports simulators, or fast-paced replicas of the real world, sports disciplines, like, for example, volleyball or indoor football, short football, or, for example, table tennis. And the key thing here is to pay attention to how you structure the overall thing. So, for example, when it comes to micro betting, when it comes to highly engaging short form markets, they are all tailored to modern digital behavior. And we do not just add sports. We engineer experiences that generate more bets per session and no longer session durations. And this is the crucial thing because, Dmitry, when it comes to modern sportsbook, you have to take into account that by creating such types of bespoke products, you end up having the casinification of sports. And this is a real case. And that's why you have bet builders. That's why you have this kind of bespoke products and custom disciplines. And that's why everything becomes more fast-paced. So the key metric, session time on bets per minute. And that's a retention flywheel. So operators who work with us close the dead time gap, those dead zones between big matches, big events, and turn them into new revenue pockets. So it's not about theory, it's about practice. And we design for engagement, we design for speed, and we do it to help operators generate revenue even when global events go dark. So, for example, the really good case was COVID, 2020. And whilst there were no active real sports events and everything went dark, all of a sudden, the solutions like we have in Betinvest or our competitors have, of course, as well, they definitely became in handy, and literally they saved the day for many companies.
Yeah, I love it. I wrote down one beautiful quote, which says, "We engineer experiences." And I think this is a very powerful statement because not many companies, they do care this much about the experience, and rather they just want to build a piece of tech. So I really like the way you mentioned this. And my next question is closely tied to it. How do you create like a unified sportsbook solution for everyone while still going deeper for your biggest partners and creating and engineering that experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, the answer is more about the architecture rather than ideology. We design our content and platform architecture to be, quite modular. So, like Lego, it consists of many components, but rather it's more about, money gambling. So, the format of the tournament, the match duration, trading logic, UI hooks, everything can be tailored per operator. And I'll tell you what, by the core engine, this SLA, the real-time infrastructure, well, it all remains bulletproof and unified. So we do not believe in building something for the sake of, creation. Like we do not create the Frankenstein products. Instead, we run a hybrid approach. So you have a stable core and also adaptive surface. And when they intertwine and when they come together into play, you end up with the greatest synergy ever. And this allows us to deliver reliability at scale and personalization at depth. So what makes this work is not tech, not at all. It's more about the philosophy of product. We do not build for operators solely. We build for players, for end users, and then work backward. So we model player behavior, segment into different archetypes, like, Jungian archetypes, but more for sports, obviously for iGaming, and then align our product variants with around actual, usage, not guesswork. So we're not plug and play, we're plug and grow. And everything we ship is built to be profitable, scalable, and aligned with our P&L, and not just wish list. So it's also important, to mention that, your product doesn't exist in a bubble. The product in general doesn't exist in a bubble. And it is not only about your relations with B2B partners, but as I already mentioned, it's more about end user experience. And you always have to look through your product. You always have to look at your product via the eyes of the end user. Like how they perceive the product, what kind of perception they have, what kind of experience they might expect, and so on and so forth. So this is the most important thing. You have to, all of your product needs to revolve around the core user and also, of course, your B2B client. And this is important.
I love it. It feels like, some of the items you mentioned are a key reasons and ways how you actually, become a true growth partner instead of just like another software and the content vendor, which is, the most traditional way in their industry. But how do you tell if the platform issues are the real problems when the operators are unhappy? Because, this kind of cooperation is a very like thin synergy between, both operator and the partner. So how do you tell if the platform issues are the real problems and they're not just complaining for the sake of complaining?
Oh, Dmitry, classics, and classics. And obviously it's always the gridlock and it's always the deadlock between, whether it's operator to blame or whether it is supplier to blame. And in the end of the day, the answer here is pretty straightforward and simple. We have to differentiate the maturity and, the rock solid foundation of what do we mean by partners, or are we just playing the blame game? So the most important thing to mention is that when operator says, for example, the platform isn't working, we ask, are we diagnosing or are we deflecting? And, it's not only our case, it is the case of many suppliers, about many operators, how the data is shared between each other, whether suppliers get any financial data from operators or not. It is also always a matter of confidentiality. So, this is some sort of the cornerstone and the principles of really great foundation that needs to be considered. Like you have to be transparent always. And this is probably the most important thing. Our approach is actually clear. So we initiate a two-way feedback loop. So we debug together with logs, metrics, and behavioral data, not opinions. And we've seen this play out many times. For example, what looked like a platform issue back in the day turned out to be a poor front-end implementation, an outdated API integration, or even operator-side latency. Or, for example, we had the issue with LATAM operators, and they delivered us all of the financial data without any proper translation. And we had to scrap through all of this information manually just to be able to categorize it and to have the proper, staging of the data. And sometimes, this is a case of not blaming somebody, but rather creating the workflow and roadmap on how we deliver the solution. And by here, there's a nuance. If KPIs are dropping and no one's raising alarms, that's actually worse, because here the blame game comes into play. When all seems fine, but session times fall, conversion drops, or repeat bets stagnate, we escalate fast. That's where the real damage lives. So yeah, we love feedback, but we verify before we blame. That's the only way to run scalable partnerships. And this is the only way to become, really mature on this market and in this industry.
I love it. We verify before we blame is another golden quote, which I think we'll definitely remember after this episode. Honestly, thank you so much, Dmitry, because I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you taking the time to break down, how sportsbook tech providers really operate. And it's a very complicated business and a very complicated niche, and your thinking and your ideas will definitely make listeners to understand this space much better now. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Dmitry.